Flavor this morning as people across the world gathering this morning to pay their respects to former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, Calgary's British Consul General Tony Kaye joining us this morning. Thanks so much for coming in, Tony.
Morning, Scott.
Unbelievable the size of this event that's going on right now, and really no surprise considering how large of a figure Margaret Thatcher was, not just in the UK but around the world.
That's right, Scott. Her passing has really showed that she was a global figure, not just a prominent political figure in Britain, and the response from the United States, from Europe, has been overwhelming in terms of the messages from President Obama, President Clinton, the European leaders now and during Margaret Thatcher's era as well. And I think that really demonstrates the impact that she had globally as well as in Britain.
And it doesn't seem to matter what political stripe you may carry, and there's definitely controversy around the former PM. It does speak, though, to what kind of an impact she had within your country, because it seems like the UK was changed forever by Thatcher.
I think that's right. If you compare the Britain of 1979 with the Britain of 1990, it's almost two different countries. Margaret Thatcher inherited an economic legacy that was very, very difficult in the 1970s, with economic difficulties, IMF bailouts, and so on. And she really turned the corner for the UK politically and economically. Some of the decisions that she took were not popular, clearly, but politicians have to make difficult decisions, and the fact that even those rabidly opposed to her political views have paid respects to her legacy, to the country, and, as I say, to the world as well.
And this might be a tough question to answer. Was she the right person at the right time, or was she strategic enough to be able to carve out this legacy that she's left behind?
Well, I think the fact that she won quite comfortably 3 elections in the UK in the 1970s and 80s, it demonstrates that she was the right person at the right time for Britain. If you look at the sort of the building blocks that she put in place economically and indeed politically, that paved the way for a Britain in the 1990s that was booming. And the last time I was here, we were talking about Britain hosting the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Britain was not in a place to host the Olympics in 1979, 1980, but in the legacies that she's put in place, I think, have developed to a very prosperous Britain, which obviously we're very pleased about.
The ceremony that was underway today, that I think is still lingering out there this morning, a $16 million ceremony. Your country, this is not something that happens often.
That's correct. She's been given a ceremonial funeral and ceremony today, which is it's one below state funeral. So the last ceremonial funeral was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and before that Princess Diana. And the fact that the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, has attended the funeral, that's the first funeral that she's attended of a Prime Minister since Winston Churchill, I think, speaks volumes. And I think also we need to sort of recognise the fact that in 1979 there weren't that many female premiers or Prime Ministers at the time, so she didn't just break through a glass ceiling that was there. It was a reinforced glass ceiling at that time, and she penetrated that.
Is it controversial that the Queen is at this ceremony, or is that a given?
It's not been controversial at all.
Okay.
Not that I've seen anyway, and I think it's right that the Queen pays respects to a Prime Minister.
This morning there were some signs out there, negative comments towards Thatcher as well as positive ones, but there is still lingering. We've seen it play out since her passing. There is still a group out there that definitely has celebrated, for lack of a better word, her passing.
I think that's true. I think it's a demonstration of the free speech and the democratic society that we live in the UK, and indeed here in Canada as well. And people will have differing views about political characters and political leaders like Margaret Thatcher. But the point is that she had to make difficult decisions. They were painful for some, but they were decisions that needed to be made at that time for Britain.
All right, we really appreciate your time, Tony, for coming in and your perspective. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Much more still ahead here as we sit at 7:26. Another spending scandal at Alberta Health. Taxpayers on the hook for an executive's trip to the U.S. More on that when we come back. Stick around.